thing for all of us to share some of the costs, and that's what we're asking the Australian people to do.
Well, the profile of all of that is being settled, but we've effectively already spent $1 billion, and we're not seeking to recoup that either from the fund. But what we will do is that we will draw down from the fund for the additional expenditure that we are putting in both state and federal. The state are entitled to around 25% of the fund over time. The great bulk of that money will come to the states after they've met the basic standard. So it will come in a couple of years' time, but it is there when they have to put in the big additional dollars to make the next leap. So it will draw down over time. I'm happy to give you the profiles, and we will spend every dollar on these endeavours, and nothing will be spent on anything else out of the fund.
Prime Minister, your opponent, Mr Abbott, says that you had to impose this levy because of mishandling the economy, and that it should be paid for, the NDIS should be paid for through consolidated revenue, and that's how he would do it. I want to get your response to that, and also if I could, the Treasurer's response to the DCA's policy is in a similar vein to that.
Okay. Well, Mark, thank you for your question. On Mr Abbott's views, we are talking about 410,000 Australians now, their families and their carers, and every Australian for the future. So if Mr Abbott says that there is another way to do this, then he owes those people not platitudes, he owes those people precise facts. So he can only stand by that claim if he publishes where he would cut to make available the amount of money necessary for disability care, not only now, but into the long term when the scheme is up in full operation. Where the money would come out of. Would it come out of pensions? Would it come out of other sections of healthcare? Would it come out of education? Would it come out of defence? Would he put company taxes up? What would he do to do the funding? Now, this is really serious. It's not, for a political platitudes and a slogan. It's not for the talking of nonsense. I said before, there are probably 410,000 people and their families and carers who are concentrating on every word of this press conference because it means so much to their lives. I feel that burden really acutely. Mr Abbott needs to shoulder that burden too, and if he's got a different way of doing this, spell out every dollar and every cent. Otherwise, he's letting those Australians down, and every Australian who wants to see this rolled out for the long term in our country, letting them down too. We'll just go to...
It's okay, I'm about to answer Mark's question. Mr Hockey thinks it's fair enough for there to be a levy to pay for a parental leave scheme for people on very high incomes, but it's not fair enough to have a modest levy to support the most disadvantaged Australians. I think that says a lot about Mr Hockey and the Liberal Party, and I'd also say that I am profoundly disappointed with the reaction of the Business Council this morning because they've got very little to say about Mr Hockey's levy, and they can't support a modest levy to right this wrong and to make sure we don't leave people with profound disabilities behind. I'm deeply puzzled by the approach of the Business Council on this question.
Okay, so we'll just go to Sam and then come back. Sorry, I'll cut that off. This is silly political games, and we don't have time for this. We've got to run the 12th biggest economy in the world. We've got to create jobs and opportunities for Australians every day. We've got to build for the future, which is not assured, and we've got to treat our fellow Australians more fairly through things like disability care. I mean, politics at the end of the day isn't about the, quick grabs at press conferences in the hope of getting something negative on the nightly news. Politics at the end of the day is about values and it's about facts. Well, we are putting our values on the table here today. We don't think any Australian should be left behind, and we're prepared to make a big decision so that Australians with disabilities don't get left behind. And politics is about the facts. We're laying the facts out on the table today, how much it costs and how we are going to fund it by asking Australians to pay an increase in the Medicare levy. Mr Abbott owes Australians the same courtesy. They're not children, they're adults, they're smart, they want the facts. He should give them the facts of his alternate approach. At the back there. Well, let's just, I'll go to the Treasurer on the economics of it, but first and foremost, if you were the family that Jenny spoke about, that lives round the corner from her, what would you be saying about the timing for this? If you walked out of this press conference and got some hideous news today about a family member or a friend, what would you be saying about the timing of this? I am prepared to be judged by these choices. Then, on the question of the government's budget and, deficit and where the budget is, facts. Did the global financial crisis happen? If you say yes to that, did it have an implication for government revenues? If you say yes to that, did we need to stimulate the economy to keep people working? If you say yes to that, then you've got the explanation about what's going on with the government's budget and why we have had deficits in our budget, and obviously we'll deal with all of the figures on budget night this year. Any person of reason seeking to explain where deficits came from needs to go through that. Is anybody seriously denying the global financial crisis happened? Well, maybe Mr Abbott is, he can answer, but everybody else knows it happened. Is anybody seriously denying that it had implications for government revenue? Or maybe Mr Abbott and Mr Hockey are, but they can answer that themselves. Is anybody seriously denying that we should have supported jobs? Well, clearly the Liberals do deny that because they voted against it. We're happy to be judged by that choice. We supported 200,000 jobs. That's the explanation about where we are, along with the high Aussie dollar and some pressures on the economy. Against that backdrop, how do you make choices? Well, you make choices that are important for people for the long term and you properly fund them, and that's what we're doing today. I'll just go to the...
I was just going to say just a couple of things on that because, our debt is a fraction of the debt of major advanced economies. And when I sit around the table at the G20, they all look at us and see a government with a strong public balance sheet. They see a government with a AAA credit rating from the three major agencies in the world. That our country is rated as highly as any other advanced economy in the world when it comes to the strength of our public finances. And Mr Abbott is not entitled to go around with his fiscal fear-mongering about debt and reflect on the strength of our economy the way he does. The truth is, we have low unemployment, we have solid growth, we have a high investment pipeline, we have strong public finances, and we have lower interest rates. But yes, at the moment, revenues are down. The responsible thing to do is to keep our economy strong and to keep people in jobs. So, as a matter of choice, because we have modest debt, we support jobs and growth, and in this budget we will put in place, again, a pathway back to surplus consistent with our strong support for employment. 900,000 jobs created in Australia since the end of 2007. That demonstrates our priority. Conditions change in the global economy from time to time, and governments must change too if they wish to protect the security of their citizens. So we've got a bright future. We've got some challenges with revenue in the short term, but also we know if we make the smart investments for the future, we can strengthen our economy for the long term. And the thing to do in the circumstances we are in at the moment is don't starve the future. Make the investments in education which will drive the prosperity of the future, and while you're doing it, also do the right thing about people with disabilities.
Thank you. There's probably questions to